to say to the people of America and the nations of the world, we're on the move and no wave of racism can stop us.
The nation's attention began to focus on the civil rights movement in the mid-1950s when a young black preacher, Martin Luther King Jr., led the successful drive to desegregate public buses in Montgomery, Alabama. King organized nonviolent protests against Southern segregation, the struggle for black equality, and voting rights. Televised footage of violence against civil rights demonstrators sparked a wave of sympathetic public opinion. Civil rights activist Andrew Young was a close friend of King's.
He taught us that our job was to redeem the soul of America from the triple evils of racism, war, and poverty.
By August 1963, the push for equality had grown significantly, and 250,000 participated in the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Congressman John Lewis was there.
When we arrived at the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, there were just hundreds and thousands of people. There were many young people, young men, up in the trees, trying to get a better view of the crowd.
King electrified the crowd.
I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Civil rights activist Julian Bond worked at the march.
This was the single most important demonstration that black people and their white supporters wanted a change in civil rights. There'd never been anything like it before, and I was so happy to have been a part of it.
King recognized the white people in the audience and urged the crowd to continue nonviolent protest.
When all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
King's speech launched what had been a mostly black Southern movement into a nationwide civil rights campaign. In 1964, King won the Nobel Peace Prize, and President Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act outlawing racial segregation in public places. The following year, the Voting Rights Act banned practices that were used to keep blacks from participating in elections. King's final campaign came in 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee, while supporting striking sanitation workers. He was assassinated at a local hotel. King was 39 years old. Civil rights activist and two-time presidential candidate Jesse Jackson was there when King died.
And even in his death, he became bigger. He was crucified in Memphis, but his resurrection has affected the whole world.
King gave this speech the night before he died.
And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we
as a people will get there.
40 years after his death, some of King's dreams were realized, including the election in 2008 of Barack Obama as the first African-American president of the United States.
Because I have a dream.
Martin Luther King's message continues to inspire people across the globe. Meredith Buell, VOA News, Washington.
As we speak, I am dispatching thousands and thousands of heavily armed soldiers, military personnel, and law enforcement officers to stop the rioting, looting, vandalism, assaults, and the wanton destruction of property.
What we witnessed for many hours overnight was a confrontation between police and protesters that symbolized the anger of a community that is pleading for and demanding justice. A phalanx of police ringed the White House, firing tear gas into the crowd, ensuring the president's safety, but infuriating so many here. They chanted the name of the man whose death in Minneapolis has triggered this unrest. But their grievances go much deeper.
We're just 200 meters north of the White House, and I've never seen an atmosphere in Washington like this. There is tear gas and pepper spray in the air, and the fury of these protesters is aimed at one institution, the police, and at one man, President Trump.
That man over there is a fascist. The man in that White House is a fascist, and it's shameful. It's shameful that they're protecting him.
A little earlier in the evening, the racial chasm that remains America's greatest wound was on open display. Protesters here with a stark message for the country.
What's the problem? We know you're racist. We are not going to stand silent anymore.
When America looks in the mirror, what does it see, do you think, these days?
Racism, hypocrisy, dividedness. That's what we see. A lot of pain, a lot of pain.
It is now nearly a week since George Floyd died, following an arrest in which an officer knelt on his neck for at least 8 minutes. The unrest is sweeping the country. 25 cities are under nighttime curfews. But as clashes play out in front of cameras and eyewitnesses, the actions of the police are only exacerbating the tension. Here in New York, a police vehicle simply drives through a crowd.
Look at this.
And in residential Minneapolis, where the protests first started, aggressive policing is infuriating people.
Get inside! Get in your house now! Let's go!
Light them up is one instruction overheard.
Light them up! Go inside now! Get in the house!
In Michigan, one local sheriff tried a dramatically different approach.
We want to be with y'all for real. So I took my helmet off and laid the batons down. I want to make this a parade, not a protest.
He joined the protesters, a rare tactic that proved far more successful in quelling the anger. Back in Washington, what we saw was a city and a country on the edge.
Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
With a president who appears to be making little effort to bridge this divide and to bring America back from the brink. Robert Moore, ITV News, Washington.
Being friendly and being a friend, I think, are two different things. I think there are many whites who act friendly toward Negroes. A fox acts friendly toward the lamb. And usually the fox is the one who ends up with the lamb chopped on his plate. The wolf doesn't act friendly, and therefore the wolf has more difficulty in getting the lamb chopped in his plate.
I'd like to point out, though, that...
And I say that because it is usually if you study the structure of the Negro community, economically, politically, civically, psychologically, and otherwise, it's controlled by the white liberal, who usually poses as the friend of the Negro, who actually differs from the white conservative in the same way that the fox differs from the wolf. Their appetite is the same. Their motives are the same. It's only their mannerisms and methods that differ.
I would agree that no doubt there have been a large number of whites who have posed as liberals and as friends of the Negro and who have time and again betrayed the Negro. On the other hand, I think one could point to a large number of whites who have struggled for civil rights, for equality, and have got little or nothing out of it, other than quite a few bruises.
Give me an example.
Well, the large number of white students who have gone into the South, for example, working for SNCC and other organizations.
Not working for SNCC or other organizations, but working for the white political machines who benefit by the voting efforts of Negroes.
Okay, I'll be more specific. I would cite Herbert Hill, for example, as a kind of person who has championed Negro job rights, for example, in New York City and elsewhere. He has fought the political machine.
First time I met Herbert Hill personally was when they were picketing to stop the working on the Harlem Hospital in Harlem. The Negroes for 10 years had to fight the city to get an annex built on the Harlem Hospital. Because in Harlem we need a hospital more so than anything else. Our people are sick. Plus we do a lot of cutting and shooting of each other, though we profess to be nonviolent. And Herbert Hill brought his forces out and stopped the working on that site. This is the first time I ever saw it. Then when work was brought to a halt on a hospital in Harlem, the same Negroes tried to stop the work at the Downstate Medical Center in Brooklyn, which is predominantly white. They were out there for 3 months during the summer. Couldn't stop anything. And I never saw Herbert Hill out there one time. Now, whenever it takes a stoppage of something that's going to affect the white man, you find the white liberal absent. But when it involves something that primarily will affect the best interests of black people, and black people only, then that white liberal is present. Herbert Hill is the labor secretary for the NAACP. And if he was interested in black people, he would prepare a black man with a type of knowledge and understanding of the labor troubles involving black people that would enable a black man to sit in the same position as Secretary of Labor or Labor Secretary in the NAACP. I'm suspicious of whites who join Negroes and always have to be in the lead, who always have to be the head, who always have to be at the top in Negro organizations. Those whites who really have the interest of blacks at heart, let them give some advice to some Negroes and stand on the sideline. But don't join the organization and then get at the head of it and pose as a friend of Negroes.